have for people in this community. There's been a lot of discussion about good cause eviction as a policy in Syracuse, so I'm putting this report out so we have the right data in front of us so we can have a clear and honest conversation. And so let's go over the facts, because that's what this report is about. Fact number one, housing is a human right.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
Fact number two, evictions in the city of Syracuse are up. We saw more than 2,100 eviction warrants filed in city court last year, and more than 1,300 were filed already by August of this year. Related, 45% of people currently experiencing homelessness in central New York live somewhere they or the leaseholder were subject to an eviction lawsuit. Since 2019, we've seen a 63% increase in homelessness and a 192% increase in family homelessness. 1 out of every 2 children in Syracuse lives in poverty, and 10% of Syracuse City School District students are homeless or housing unstable. Fact number 3, rents are rising dramatically in Syracuse. Fair market rents increased 16%, and overall rents are up 22%. To afford a basic 2-bedroom apartment in the city of Syracuse, a person has to make between $19 and $25 an hour. That is above a living wage at this point. So let's be clear about something. Housing is the matter of the moment. The city of Syracuse is experiencing a housing and a homelessness crisis. We need to alleviate this crisis by implementing the right policies, building more housing, and critically enacting a good cause eviction law here in the city of Syracuse. We have to understand how good cause works to make that happen. It prevents excessive rent increases, it guarantees tenants in good standing a lease renewal, and it eliminates no-fault evictions. Now here's how we do this. The Common Council needs to pass the good cause law.
That's right.
New York State has given localities some latitude for how to do this. Communities can pick their own affordability percentage, the rent threshold required for a unit to be considered a luxury unit, and they also need to pick a unit threshold, which is establishing the number of units a landlord must own to be subject to the law. Most communities that have opted into this, and I'm proud to say there's now 7 other communities across New York State that have done so, have done it with an affordability percentage of 345% of fair market rent, and they have also done so with a unit threshold set at 1. Now, why is that number so important? Have the unit threshold set at 1? Because 38% of rental units in the city of Syracuse are owned by limited liability corporations, anonymous holding companies that shield owners from the liability of owning a property. I was ambitious about being out here in the cold. LLCs are legally distinct owners. Even if you know who's behind it, they are legally separate entities. If the unit threshold is set above 1, a myriad of units will be left out of these critical protections. Besides good cause evictions, my report is making some other important recommendations for housing in this community and in New York State. I'm calling on New York State to enact a statewide housing access voucher program, to write to council, and to legislation to strip state licenses from people like real estate brokers who own properties with excessive code violations. I am also calling on the City of Syracuse Common Council to pursue a municipal LLC Transparency Act so that LLC owners have to declare beneficial ownership information with the City of Syracuse before doing business with us, like setting up water payment accounts or signing up for the rental registry. I feel strongly about this policy, and as you can see, I am not alone. People who support this policy will not be alone.
That's right.
I am joined by community leaders, organized labor, elected officials, all of whom are in this fight together. When I took office dual mandate, providing strong oversight of the work of city government today and better insight into the decisions we need to make for tomorrow. This report is squarely in that mandate because the cost of homelessness and eviction is tremendous in our city. Emergency services, shelters, police resources, all cost city taxpayers a tremendous amount of money. Good cause eviction will make a difference for years and years to come. And look, we need to make sure that this happens and this gets done. We can fight to reduce the number of evictions. We need to see a lot fewer of these cropping up around the city of Syracuse and a lot more people in stable, good, quality housing.
That's right.
So while I go off on the side and cough, let me bring up a few folks who have a story to share about this. First, I want to have Sal Curran. Sal, come on over here. Sal Curran, who's the executive director of the Volunteer Lawyers Project.
Yay! Yay!
Thank you. I just want to commend Alexander Marion for this report. It's an excellent, excellent job, and it really lays out the important issues regarding good cause eviction in our community. And I just want to say I'm standing here in front of all of these amazing tenant advocates who are out there fighting every day to prevent homelessness. Volunteer Lawyers Project of Central New York defends hundreds of tenants every year. We work to fight against evictions because not only is housing a human right, but this has tremendous impacts on the community members that we serve, on our schools. I'm a city resident myself, and I have to tell my son when he goes into school, you know, there are kids in your classroom that don't know where they're sleeping tonight. There are kids in your classroom when they can't pay attention. It might be because they don't know where they're going to get their food and they don't know where they're going to rest their heads. And that is that happening to one family is too much. But it's happening to hundreds of families every year here in Syracuse. We know that we have had an ongoing housing issue, but it's been exacerbated. In the past, it used to be over 90% of the eviction filings were about non-payment. And we could get into arguments about whether or not that's right. And I'll tell you, we very strongly support the housing voucher, a statewide housing voucher. But what has changed in the last couple of years is now over 25% of the evictions that are being filed are without cause. 25% of the evictions, we're talking over 500 evictions a year are being filed for no reason. The tenants are current on rent, perhaps, and this is what we see over and over again, the tenant said to the landlord, hey, the sewage is backed up in the basement, or hey, there are rats in my apartment. Can you please take care of this? And within a couple of weeks, that landlord serves them a notice saying, you got to get out of here, or I'm going to increase your rent 100% from $750 a month to $1,500 a month, which is the same thing. There are protections in the law that says you can't retaliate against a tenant for asserting the right to habitable housing. But you know what? You don't get to put in those protections until you're already in court. And too many of our tenants are not able to get legal representation or not able to make court. Because guess what? To make it so that they can pay their next rent bill, they have to work. They can't miss a day of work to go to court. So what good cause eviction does, it says the landlord needs to have a reason for evicting, and they need to say that up front. They need to tell the tenant the reason for the eviction, and they need to tell the court. The tenant shouldn't have to defend themselves against absolutely unreasonable evictions. They should be able to have the landlord put that case forward. Folks, this is a very serious issue. We are talking about something that not only interrupts schooling for kids, but causes great levels of depression and anxiety, causes job loss, causes increased use of emergency care, and ultimately, in a worst case scenario, causes homelessness.
That's right.
So we have got to address this, and we call on all of the common counselors to take the step now to pass good cause eviction to try to protect our tenants and make our community more stable.
residents of our city, and we need to take the steps now to protect them, to protect tenants, and to honestly save taxpayers money. It costs a lot of money to shelter folks. It causes a lot of disruption in their families when they find themselves homeless, and rehousing them is complicated, expensive, and without tenant protections and without vouchers, we are not able to meet the demands right now. So I call on our common councilors as well to pass good cause eviction, help protect the residents of the city. Thank you.
And next I'd like to introduce you to Jocelyn Richards from the Syracuse Tenants Union.
Yay!
Hi, today I want to talk about the urgency of the housing and homelessness crisis in Syracuse, and I want to highlight good cause as a short-term, immediately effective solution or remedy to this crisis. So a lot of times our city council focuses on longer-term solutions like the housing strategy, investing in housing stock, demolishing properties and rebuilding them. That takes decades. And what's happening, like homelessness is created today, tomorrow in housing court when people are evicted and forced out of their homes. The city never has an answer for that. Like when we get calls from tenants daily who are facing rent increases of 60%. A woman called me 2 weeks ago who's disabled. Her landlord is increasing the rent 60% in November. She'll have to get out. She can't afford that. And there is currently no law in place that allows her to challenge that exorbitant rent increase. There's nothing I can say to her how she can fight back. Good cause would help her in that situation. There's another man also who's currently going through an eviction. Simply because, he had a few code violations in his home. He asked his landlord to address them, and now he's getting a non-renewal. So the landlord's not renewing his lease for no reason, and of course not repairing the home either. So again, for these tenants, like where are they going to go when they're forced out of their homes next week? Next week, like the city council has no answer to that. Their housing strategy is going to take years. We need something today, tomorrow, and the cool thing about Good Cause, like I was at a housing convention with tenants from across New York State 2 weeks ago, and the question was asked, how many of you know somebody who has been able to stay in their homes due to Good Cause this year? And about 60 or 70% of people there raised their hands. So this is because other upstate cities have opted in, and within a month, 2 months of opting in, they already know people who have been able to stay housed because of Good Cause. So this is like an immediately effective policy that would help Syracuse and address the homelessness crisis, address the housing crisis. So we need to pass this now. Syracuse Tenants Union is not going to stop fighting until we see the strongest version of Good Cause passed in Syracuse.
Yeah, right.
Thank you, Jocelyn. Now we have County Legislator Palmer Harvey joining us.
Bummer!
We really need to pass a cause eviction here in the city. Most of my entire district is in the city, and I have constituents who constantly complain about the poor housing conditions, the rent increases. It's disgusting at this point. We must do something to get this homeless situation tackled. It's really deeply offensive to me that we sit here
and state laws, there's a lot of tools we can use to help them out. But the problem that we're seeing, and that reason we need good cause, is that when someone calls us, one of the first things that our intake staff asks is, when's your lease up? Because if your lease is up in a month, in 2 months, we have a lot fewer options, because as it stands, the landlord can just say, I'm not going to renew. Doesn't have to give a reason, doesn't have to say why. They couldn't evict you because they were discriminating against you, but they can just say, this is too much trouble. You know, you're asking because you have a disability for reasonable modification of the apartment you can enjoy. This is too much, I'm just not renewing. And we see this happening. This happens in our communities and communities across the state, which is why we and other fair housing organizations have advocated for good cause at the state level for a long time and are now advocating for it here. I know there's a lot of concern about the process here. It's a state law now. The locality has to do it. So I really appreciate this report coming out to lay out the ins and outs, the nuts and bolts of how it works. And I think that the auditor's report is very good about explaining all of that. But the fear is getting a piece of legislation a little bit wrong. To me, that's not the biggest fear. The biggest fear that I have is that a child is homeless. That's what we're seeing right now. That's what we have to deal with. We don't need to be waiting for data from elsewhere to say, oh, what's the specific changes in this and that, whatever. We know, we have data from here that kids are going without a place to sleep at night. And that is unacceptable. And so we're going to push for this until it actually happens.
And now, the man, the myth, the legend, Mark Spatafor, the president of the Greater Syracuse Labor Council.
Thank you, Alex, and yeah, stay over there. So you might be asking, why is the Labor Council here on a housing issue? I'll give you 3 reasons why we are here. Number one, at the graduate student organizing campaign up at SU, the number one issue that came out of that was housing, affordable housing. The fact that there's a lack of affordable housing, so there's a lack of housing stock, and the cost of the housing that was there was just too high. So wages and benefits, which is usually when you organize workers, that's the big issue. It was housing. I want to also point you to a second issue. Last week we had a forum on Micron to have a community benefits agreement, and we passed around cards at the end of the night of what's the big issue. Overwhelmingly, the number one issue, housing. So people in this city are saying that housing is an issue. We are providing an answer for you with good cause legislation. Other cities in New York State have done this. This is not some wild-eyed idea that's coming out of nowhere. The New York State government has given the localities the ability to do it. It's time for them to act, which leads me to my third point. There's this old song in the labor movement. It's actually upgraded with by the Dropkick Murphys. The title of the song is, Which Side Are You On? And what I would say to the common councilors today is that look at your district. Look at how many people are tenants in your district. Look how many landlords don't live in your district. Think about what is in the best interest for your district, for your city. And I hope that you would conclude that you would support good cause. Thank you.
That's excellent. Thank you all very much. Thank you, Mark. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions that you guys may have. Yes.
Hi, I was wondering how you think committee discussions or common council discussions around good cause have been going, just in general. Do you think that they've been progressing it? Do you think that
They've only had one formal committee meeting so far, and Alex Lawson was there, participated in that. That is the only thing they have done so far. The council has not scheduled any further committee meetings. They have indicated they would like to, but we have yet to see any put on the calendar. A number of councilors have said that there is an interest in having some public forums or town hall meetings in their respective districts or catchment areas. I've yet to see any of those get put on the calendar as well. If they would like public input, we have plenty of opportunities for that. Put it on the calendar. Everyone will be there. I'm happy to be there. These folks will all happily be there. I think, do we all agree there's a lot of public input that we have on this? The public is ready to provide their input. They need the opportunity to do so. And I would urge the council to quickly give people the opportunity to provide that input.
Are you hoping that this information helps better inform the council
as providing oversight of the decisions the city makes today and insight into the decisions we need to make tomorrow. Good cause eviction is a decision the city needs to make, and I think the data in this report makes it clear that it is the right decision, and it lays out the path to do it the right way. The city of Syracuse is 60% renters. 60% of the people who live in the city of Syracuse, represented by myself and the other elected officials in this building, are tenants. We need to do the right thing for the people that we serve every single day.
Are there protections for responsible landlords, who might be, renting to irresponsible tenants who cause damage or who are otherwise squatting, or situations like that where, they might have good cause?
Yes.
Will they be protected?
Yes, they simply need to demonstrate that there is a cause to evict someone. If a tenant is damaging a property, if a tenant is causing a nuisance for other neighbors in the building, if a tenant is engaging in illegal activity, those are all legitimate causes to evict a tenant. Additionally, landlords are still able to do rent increases. It sets a formula for what those rent increases are. It is CPI plus 5% or 10%, whichever is lower. You can still recoup rent, you can still get your rent, still raise the rent to make sure you are continually meeting increasing costs for the building. That is in there, that is part of the package here. We are not saying, this is not a ban on all evictions. This is not a moratorium on evictions. This is not a ban on all rent increases. No, this just creates some guardrails and a reasonable process to follow so that as landlords and tenants engage in these agreements, everyone has some understanding and some assurance of how it's going to work and how to make sure people have safe, stable homes going forward.
Is there a concern that it could discourage responsible landlords from, locating in the city, renting their properties, or maybe just deciding to rent their house or whatever?
If you're a responsible landlord, you're probably doing most of these things already.
Alexander, you do a cost-benefit analysis on everything. What is the cost-benefit for this, for passing this legislation? What does it cost compared to the benefit?
So there's not a direct cost to the city for passing this. What it does, the benefit of doing this is you're going to have more stable housing for more people in the city of Syracuse. You're going to see fewer people being evicted. It will clear up the lengthy delays that we see at housing court happening already, because you will have fewer people bringing eviction cases for no reason. You will also see ideally, you'll see fewer people who are being evicted and put out onto the streets, into shelters, into the homelessness system, and which, as we know, there is a tremendous and expensive response in emergency services, with our police department, in so many of the other social services and supports that we need to engage in to help people who are experiencing homelessness. We can limit the number of people experiencing homelessness if we can ensure they can stay in their housing. And that you will see over time an incredible benefit to this community from being able to redirect resources away from those emergency responses into letting people have more stable lives. And I just also want to add, we're not the canary in the coal mine. First of all, other communities in New York State have already done this. Albany, Ithaca, Kingston, Beacon, Newburgh, New Paltz, and Poughkeepsie have already done this, and Nyack have already done it in New York State in the last few months since the state legislature passed the enabling law. We weren't even the first. The state of New Jersey has